Andrew Williams.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. I take a call on behalf of New Zealand First in this omnibus bill covering cheque duty, covering climate change and covering building supplies. And just to cover them briefly, in terms of the cheque duty, New Zealand First supports that change. We feel it's very late and it's overdue and it should have been done a long time ago, and we cannot understand why it's taken this government 6 years to getting around to it. I pulled out a chequebook a few weeks ago to write out a cheque, and I think I hadn't used it for more than about 2 years. And I noticed that it was first issued, that particular chequebook, in about 2007 or 2008. So I paid that $2.50 some 6 years ago or something or other, and so it is a bit of a nonsense, and really it should have been done away with a long time ago. And again, it was a little fiddle around the edges in the budget, another little lollipop to try and make things look good, but at the end of the day it was immaterial. The second thing, in terms of climate change, again we think it's just fiddling around the edges. New Zealand First has no time for the ETS scheme. We think it's just another money laundering scheme for bankers and financiers and people from the likes of Merrill Lynch to basically take and extort money from the New Zealand economy into places like New York and London and Frankfurt and other financial markets, trading on emissions trading scheme. And basically New Zealanders and the New Zealand government, the New Zealand economy will pay dearly. We again will be the guinea pigs, the suckers. We will pay out around the world to these people, and probably in years to come we'll all look back in hindsight and say, how on earth did we get dragged into that? Why did we bother? Well, New Zealand First says don't have a bar of it. Get on with our own problems here in New Zealand in terms of emissions, sort out our own emissions here in New Zealand, work constructively in New Zealand in terms of what is polluting our own environment, what's happening around our own country in terms of emissions, and put that money, levy the polluters here in New Zealand, and make sure the money goes back constructively into sorting out the issues with pollution here in New Zealand, not sending it off to some money-making scheme administered by the likes of Merrill Lynch in New York. And the third part of this bill, which is the main part in our view in terms of issue to New Zealand, is the Building Supplies Bill. And this is where we have huge opposition to this. New Zealand First believes this is another attempt by the national government to undermine New Zealand manufacturers. Again, New Zealand manufacturers are the brunt of this. We sat on the manufacturing inquiry in the last year, and we were prepared, the government wasn't prepared, but we were prepared alongside other opposition parties to listen to our manufacturers. And those who are in the manufacturing sector, not in the agricultural manufacturing sector, not in sectors that are exporting our primary produce and other things, those who are actually in just basic everyday manufacture are finding it pretty tough. With the dollar up around 86 cents and heading towards 90, they are finding it very tough. And therefore, they do need some assistance to stay viable here in New Zealand. And when they're up against very, very cheap sources of materials, such as in the building industry, coming out of the likes of China, coming out of the likes of Indonesia, Thailand and other places, which have already been identified in the last 2 or 3 years as being dumped in this market and seriously undercutting our own manufacturers of wallboards, of steel coil, of steel reinforcing, of nails and other such construction materials, where it has been already proven that that's been going on and having a very serious detrimental effect on our manufacturers in New Zealand, then we, New Zealand First, say we will stand up and we will support our manufacturers. We will go into battle for them. We will make sure that they do have that level of protection, because they're up against other economies who have got huge scale, much lower wage rates, much lower standards of production in terms of quality and warranty that come with it, and therefore it's not a level playing field. So the whole idea of these anti-dumping tariffs is to try and create a level playing field to ensure that those New Zealand manufacturers are not disadvantaged. Mr Speaker, the Minister refused to answer some of the questions I put to him in the committee stage, such as in the regulatory impact statement it said from MB, the Ministry of Everything, that their report said it was going to be something in the order of $900 saving per house in this. We've heard from the Minister it was going to be a saving of $3,500. It's very interesting that there are contradictory pieces of information being provided, and yet the Minister will not stand up throughout this whole debate today and give an explanation as to why those figures are different. There might be a reasonable explanation. It might be justifiable. But when I read a regular impact report here where it says in this that it's only $900 per residential household, that's the figure I take when I see it in writing from the officials. Mr Speaker, we've also heard from the Minister that this will help reduce house prices in Auckland. Now, I held this up earlier in the day and said the problem in Auckland is houses are being bought by people from all over the world. Not just from the people from Asia, they're being bought by all sorts of people from all over the world. And these people are buying them because the Auckland housing market is hot, and it's going up, and it's going up at a rapid rate. And they are bidding on telephones to auction floors in Takapuna, rooms full of people in Takapuna, and they're on phones back overseas. They are, Mr Hayes, they are, I can assure you. I've got a daughter who's been in the real estate market, and she gives me information as to what is happening. I've got other friends in the real estate market who have told me as well. They are bidding, and half the time these people are sitting back overseas and they're bidding blindly on properties and buying them in Auckland. There are properties on the North Shore that are bought, closed up, left empty, done nothing with, sitting there on the basis of speculative purchase, knowing how fast property is going up in Auckland, in the Auckland market, sitting empty. $1 million homes sitting empty. Houses being bought in Auckland, 3 houses in a row in a street being bought, those 3 houses taken off those properties, and 6 dwellings built in their place for speculative purposes, and it's all being done in a large cash market. And then there's a paper like this, where in Auckland, huge paper, and it's not in English, of properties all over Auckland, but a New Zealander would struggle to read it. So, Mr Speaker, you know, this is concerning. And I stand as a 5th-generation New Zealander whose family came here in the 1840s on both my mother's and father's side. I stand up for the young people of New Zealand who tell us all the time as politicians, how on earth are we ever going to afford to buy a house in the likes of Auckland when the properties are being bought from many offshore sources? It is incredible. Mr Speaker, at the same time, through this whole thing where the government has said that through the budget they're going to try and massage thing, they're doing so well. We heard from Mr Goldsmith, he gave his checklist of how wonderful the government was and checking off all the things through all these things and how it's saving all these various things. And then you hold up this piece of paper from the budget which shows contributions to superannuation in the next 5 years from the government. 2015, 0. 2016, 0. 2017, 0. 2018, 0. Mr Goldsmith, you cannot claim a $372 million surplus and say how wonderful you've done, while New Zealanders and the future New Zealanders and New Zealanders retiring, who with the baby boomer bubble coming before us, they will be retiring in years to come with a superannuation scheme that your government will not have contributed 1 cent to in the decade between 2008-9 and 2019, a whole decade of no contributions to the future of this country, while at the same time the young people of this country are up against this trying to buy a house in Auckland. Mr Speaker, this government is really disappointing. And then they come to this House under urgency, put these pathetic little things like the removal of cheque duty on chequebooks and a little bit about climate change and a little bit of massa, and they think that's urgent business of the government under urgency. Well, Mr Speaker, it's not. New Zealand First says otherwise. We think there's a much bigger picture here, a much bigger picture in terms of what's happening in our economy, and New Zealand First will address that on the 20th of September.
Phil Twyford.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I'm conscious that I'm standing between the House and the end of the sitting week.